It's Taco Tuesday!
Yo, what's going on, everyone? Taco here, back with another New World video. Today I'll be sharing my quick guide and some tips for the third expedition, the Depths. Similar to my last guide, I'm not going to walk you through every specific area in the dungeon because that would make for a really long video, and I also think just navigating through the dungeon, clearing out the mobs, and exploring is part of the fun in doing these expeditions. So I'll mainly focus on the areas where I struggled and where I've seen other members struggle in my groups, and then I'll definitely cover both of the boss fights with some great detail because in my opinion, the bosses in this dungeon are significantly more difficult than the previous two expeditions. Now before we jump into things, as always, hammer that like button if you've been enjoying the New World content, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't and want to continue to see more. To start this expedition, similar to the previous two dungeons, it's going to require a tuning orb in order to enter, or you're going to have a group member that already has an orb. The Depths suggest you to be level 45 or higher for this expedition, and you'll find the entrance is going to be in Restless Shores, located within this waterfall where I've currently marked and where I'm standing on the map. Like the previous expeditions, there is going to be a repeatable quest, so you're able to run through this dungeon several different times, and in order to trigger this, you'll speak to a lizard who's kind of camouflaged, but he's laying right by the pond outside of the cave entrance. So you ask me, what's the loot for this expedition? The rare rewards for the Depths are an epic musket, a life staff, sword, a ring, and then a bow. So I landed the sword as a reward after my first ever run, which was cool, although I don't use it for my build. But regardless, you're going to get other epic drops and the expedition base gear set by just looting the chests from the boss drops and then just completing the expedition, which are all going to be very viable gear and rewards for this point of the main story and really just your overall character progress. Now I'm just going to cover some quick tips that I think are specific and helpful to this expedition, but really just some overall. And one of the ones that I emphasized in my last guide was the tank aggro, because I've still had runs where people mess this up. When you enter a room or an area and there's a high density of mobs, you're going to want your tank, before attacking them, to just run past them all and essentially round up as many as possible. Almost like you're building up a train in like Nazi zombies or something. And so once you get all of them rounded up and you take their aggro, this is going to make your run so much more efficient and faster because it's going to allow mages like myself to focus our AoE along with the healers and really all damage in general, to have it all centralized in this one specific area rather than having everyone just take on individual fights. So wait for your tanks to round up as many enemies as possible before attacking them yourself, and that really is just going to make this run a lot more simple. This dungeon also is going to introduce a teleport feature that I don't think we've seen prior. This really isn't anything complicated, but for some reason I've seen people mess this up time and time again. Just take the teleports along the path that you're following throughout the dungeon. I've seen loot fall around the teleports, which has actually caused people to teleport by accident, which is annoying, but just be wary of that, and worst case, if you do teleport away, just follow the same path that you did to get back there. Now we're at the part where I know a lot of people, especially if it's your first time or first few times, this is where they begin to struggle, including myself on my first run. So after you've traversed your way through, you're going to get to the first boss fight with Archdeacon Azamala. In my opinion, this is a harder fight than the final boss fight because it requires significantly more teamwork and coordination. Azamala is going to have two different phases. The first being the DPS phase, where your tank is going to hold aggro and everyone else does damage either from afar, or if you're using melee, then right behind her. The boss is going to spawn in two dogs and you're going to want to kill them as quick as possible. Its attacks are going to be a short range mage vicinity attack and then a longer range mage attack, which almost sends this cloud in the shape of like a skeleton in the path of a player, and that one is going to do a significant amount of damage if you get caught in it. You can just roll to evade those, and you have a good sense of when it's aimed in your direction, so it's not like they really pop up exactly in front of you. After doing a quarter of health bar damage, you're going to see phase 2 will start. Now you'll know phase 2 will start because these mines will spawn around the boss, and the boss will become invulnerable to damage. This is where shit gets real. And there's a few different alternatives to completing this from what I've seen. Essentially, the boss is going to continue to spawn mines. Meanwhile, on the two sides of the arena are a pillar on each side that need to be interacted with. But these pillars are guarded by 2 mages, and that you're going to have to eliminate them in order to interact with the pillar. The mines will continue to spawn until both of the pillars are finally completed, and that will end that phase. So ideally, you're going to want to either complete the pillars as quick as possible or do enough damage in the center around the boss so that the mines don't explode. Because if the mines explode, everyone in the area will feel the damage, and that damage is multiplied by the number of mines that are up. Now, there is a time period in order to destroy the mines. You probably have, I don't know, maybe 5 seconds to destroy them before they go off. So, you either treat it like a sprint and go all out on knocking out the pillars to quickly end the phase, or you do damage heavy in the center, take care of the mines, and have 1 or 2 people do the pillars at a slower pace. One method that we've done is we'll send the healer and the tank to the pillars, and that's going to leave the other 3 DPS players in the middle to take care of the mines. For the DPS players, you're going to all want to focus on 1 mine at a time. So we would do the closest to us and then continue until the furthest one is the last one. Another tip for this section is to have your players in the middle lean or position themselves closer towards whatever side pillar the healer is on. That way, if you guys are taking damage, maybe you run out of pots or food, you're able to get healed because you're in the vicinity of it. The other method that I've seen is stick one of your highest DPS members in the middle and send everyone else to the pillars, having 2 go to the left and 2 to the right, which works fine because you'll likely defeat the mages faster and you'll get the pillars knocked out quicker. You will take mine damage most likely, but if you're able to tank it with consumables, you will defeat this phase pretty quick. You will do each phase 2 times. The first time when you're doing the mine phase, it's only going to be 1 or 2 mines, and that's kind of a way to warm you up to it. The second time, he'll be throwing 3 to 4 mines at you, and you will have to do both the left and right pillar. Now, I'll warn you all now, if you're a mage like myself, the ice gauntlets and fire staff are really poor weapons for taking out the mines. You just won't do as much damage as if you have a melee or alternative weapon, and using your abilities, you're going to fly through your mana. Also, if you're a first timer or you're running with a squad of people doing it for the first time, don't be surprised if you fail and you need a few attempts. That's okay, it takes us a little bit to get used to the mine mechanics. But once you get that mine phase down, you'll be good moving forward. The second and final boss to end this expedition is going to be Commander Thorpe. Now, if you have mage or mainly ranged weapons for DPS, it's going to make this a lot easier, especially compared to the previous boss, where in my opinion, I think melee weapons are a lot more effective. As always, the tank is going to gain aggro and really try to hold his focus for as much and as long as possible. Now, I don't play a tank, but I do know that timing and evading his hits is going to be key as you're backpedaling, and then as always, try to stay within the heal as you're moving with him. For everyone else in the room, DPS from range as much as you can. Now for Thorpe, he's going to have a few different attacks. One of them being that he'll stare at you and kind of point in your direction, and when he does, you'll see the air begin to swirl a bit. That's going to be your sign to dodge because he will pull you right to him and absolutely destroy you. Also, the ground will light up red in certain areas. I think this usually happens in phase 2, but it's possible it could happen in phase 1. And what we call this is the ring of fire. So you're going to want to roll out of that area before it does catch on fire, because that can do some serious damage to you. And then lastly, fireballs will randomly spawn. This is definitely more so in the second phase, but these fireballs will spawn and you're just going to want to dodge out of their direction because they can wreck you as well. So watch out if he focuses on you. Do not stand in that ring of fire, that red area, and then just be mindful of the fireballs. For the second phase, you will see 2 mobs spawn out of the ground, and everyone besides the tank needs to focus all their damage and eliminate them as quick as possible. In this phase, he will also have a laser attack. You'll see in this video, our tank is going to lure him towards the stairs entrance. And the reason in doing that and why I recommend that is that the laser will actually just shoot over everyone's heads when he turns around since he is elevated. That's a great way to lure him, but simply dodging or moving away from the laser isn't too hard either. Thorpe is a lot easier for the DPS crew. It just really requires an experienced tank to hold it down, and this boss is fairly easy. That should about cover Commander Thorpe, and that's going to conclude this expedition. I hope you guys found this guide helpful and that you get good RNG on your runs. If you have any other comments or questions that I didn't cover, as always, feel free to drop them in the description. and I'll be happy to answer. And if you found this helpful, please hammer that like button for me and subscribe to support the channel. Until next Tuesday, I'm out.